like I said before, everything that we do, everything that, you know, everything starts with lead generation. Literally everything. There's nothing. If you don't have a lead, you don't have a business. You have nothing going on. So it needs to start with your lead generation. And then once you generate a lead, it doesn't always turn into an appointment right away. So that's where we're going to talk about lead follow-up, right? You need to have a system. You need to be doing it consistently. And when you're following up, you need to remember to close early and close often. If you're not closing for an appointment, then there's no point in even making a phone call in the first place, right? Because if you don't close for an appointment, how are you going to do number 3, go on appointments, right? Now, assuming you've done 1, 2, and 3, right? So you've lead generated, followed up with that lead, you closed them, you've got an appointment. Well, the 4th step is going to be to write and negotiate contracts, right? That's your next close that you need to do. Once you've gone on appointments, the next thing you need to do is be closing for a contract. Assuming that the buyer is looking at properties that they like, right? So once you write a contract, you're going to be what's known in this. You have 2 agents. You have the listing agent, and if you represent the buyer, you're the selling agent. We're going to start with selling agent, contracts on the seller side, some of the strategies that we use when we write a contract for our buyers. But a lot of people think a selling agent is the listing agent. It is not. It is the agent that represents the buyer, that brings the buyer, and ultimately ends up selling this property. Before you write an offer, right? You looked at a property, they love the property, everything about it. They've already moved in, they've placed their furniture, they know where they're going to do everything. You're going to want to send your customers comparable sales. You don't need to do a full CMA. It's not a listing appointment, right? But you do want them to have some knowledge of what's sold in the neighborhood. If the property is listed for $450,000 and you say, well, we should just offer $450,000, but you didn't send them any comparable sales and they have nothing to go off of, then how do they know that they're getting a good price, right? How do they feel comfortable going through the process, writing this contract when they have no idea what this property's worth except what it's listed for, right? The listing price, right? Price is not value, right? When you're sending comparable sales, you're helping them to determine value, right? They're going to compare finishes, they're going to compare square footage, they're going to compare the size of the lot, right? They're comparing this entire property to whatever they're getting in the comparable sales. A lot of agents gloss over that, they skip over that, and then when you get to the appraisal, there's problems, right? Always, before you send the offer, Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Seller, or Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, I see that you really like this property. Do you want to write an offer on it? Yes, we do. Okay, great. I'm going to go back to my office. I'm going to pull up some comps for you. I'm going to email them over to you to take a look at it, and then we can get the offer process rolling. Simple as that, right? Be a fiduciary for your customers. Be a value to them. Don't be a liability to them. So send them comps. They want to write the offer. Well, where do we start, right? How do we write the offer? Number 1, you need to read and understand the contract. This is like real estate, not even 101, right? It's whatever comes before real estate 101. If you're filling out contracts, whether it's the buyer's contract, the listing contract, the as-is contract, the crisp contract, whatever it is, if you're filling out contracts and you haven't read that contract top to bottom before starting, you're doing your customer an absolute disservice. There's a lot of agents that do it, right? They have a problem, something happens, they have a problem, and they call me up and they say, hey, here's this issue. How do I solve this? I say, well, what's in the contract? Did you read the contract? And everybody always says, yes, they read the contract. But based on the problem and the lack of knowledge of the solution, I know already they didn't read the contract, right? You must read the contract. It doesn't matter which one it is. I can't emphasize this enough. Read the contract. That's your first in writing a contract. You must read the contract, no matter what. Like, there's no question about it. If you don't know that contract top to bottom, left to right, up to down, inside out, then read it again. If you don't understand it, then call us and we'll help you to understand it. But reading the contract is really, really, really important. Really, really, really important. So don't forget that step, please. It's not something they teach you in real estate school. Gold Coast doesn't teach it to you. You know, you have to actually go in and read the contract, right? So, oh man, Irene, can you share real quick? Um, yeah, because that's on the wrong one. All right. So, well, before you, when you represent a buyer, you need to have a buyer agency agreement, right? The very first thing that you need to have in when presenting a contract for a buyer is a buyer agency agreement, right? This is going to outline all of the duties that you have with your customer, and you do have duties with your customer, right? It depends. Are you a single agent? Are you a transaction broker? Do you have no representation with them, right? This is going to determine the type of relationship, confidentiality, you know, things that you can share, things that you can't share. Single agent means that you work specifically with that customer. You are that customer's agent. Transaction broker means you represent the transaction. In our brokerage, we always represent as a transaction broker, whether we're working with the buyer or whether we're working with the seller. We always represent as a transaction broker. If you have a listing and a buyer comes by and looks at your listing and you're a single agent and they want to write an offer, they want to buy it, we can't represent them because it's illegal to have dual agency in the state of Florida. If you're a transaction broker, you can represent the transaction, which means you can have the buyer and you can have the seller, but just make sure that you understand the difference in those duties and those obligations, right? You need to understand, it's very important. If you're a transaction broker, don't act like a single agent. And if you're a single agent, don't act like a transaction broker. There's going to be ethics issues with those things, right? You're going to run into ethics problems, right? So go through, fill this out, keep everything general. You know, they're going to ask about price. They're going to ask about location, you know, the type of property. You know, the type of property is going to be residential real estate, right? Location, Broward County, Palm Beach County, Miami-Dade County. You can even put state of Florida. Doesn't matter, right? Keep it super duper vague. You don't want to be real specific about these things in here, right? Price range, $0 to $1 billion. Doesn't really matter, right? The most important thing about this is that you have the broker's obligations covered, right? This doesn't need to be anything super specific. This really should be somewhat vague. So keep it vague, you know, keep it, I don't know, just a broad range of things, right? You don't need to narrow it down. If you do, you're going to paint yourself into a corner. You know, you're going to say they're looking for a condo up to $450,000, and then you're going to send this with, you know, while they're buying a townhouse for $650,000, right? Well, it's outside of their range, right? What does that mean? I don't know, but when you scroll to the bottom of the MLS and you see the 3 different commission types, right? You're going to want to be in that commission type that is actually getting a commission, right? It's got a single agent, transaction broker, no brokerage relationship. Which one are you, right? Protect yourself, protect your customer, protect your commission. Always, always, always send this when you send your first offer. If you haven't written your first offer yet and you need help going and you need guidance going through this, pop in with us. We're happy to help you, right? So then once you've filled out the buyer agency agreement, we're going to fill out the as-is contract. A couple of things with the as-is contract. We use Form Simplicity. I encourage everybody in our office to use Form Simplicity when you're using contracts. You can use whatever you want, you know, but if you're using another program, we may not be able to help you, right? Because we're not going to be, we're not knowledgeable with how these other programs work. In Form Simplicity, if you look at my screen, if you look at this here, you're going to see the blue highlighted areas. In Form Simplicity, the blue highlighted areas are the areas where you're going to fill in the blanks. You'll see on Irene where she's sharing, she put stars in there. If you look all the way over to the left, those numbers in the left-hand column there, right? That's your line number, right? So you could say, you know, I don't know, paragraph 1, subparagraph D, or you could say line number 15, right? However you want to say that. Looking at those numbers again, you're going to see stars. Those stars next to the 1, next to the 2, next to the 7, 8, 9, so on and so forth, those tell you that in that line, there's a blank that needs to be filled out, right? So there's an area there that you can either fill it in or you can leave it blank, but that means there's an area where you can leave it blank. One thing to point out, you cannot change any of the verbiage inside this contract, right? All you can do is fill in the blanks. You can't cross out words and replace them with other words. That's an ethics violation, right? We're not attorneys. You can't act as an attorney. The only people who can actually modify this contract would be an attorney. So don't play attorney. Don't cross out words that are in this contract, right? Keep it how it is and just fill in the blanks. In form simplicity, you can fill in the blanks one time on an info page, and a lot of this stuff will auto populate, right? The legal description, county, street, property ID. You can put your buyer's name. It'll automatically populate in all of the areas. Additionally, let's look at what line is that? Line number 32, right? Escrow agent. Escrow agent doesn't have to be the title agent. That's really just who's holding the escrow. So don't assume when you see that escrow agent name that that's also the title agent. That just means who's holding the escrow, right? Page 1 has all of, pretty much, in my opinion, all of the most important information that you have, right? Your price, escrow amount, deposit, your second deposit. Are they getting financing? How many days to accept it? Closing date, which now flows over into page 2 because they made some changes. But page 1 and top of page 2 is going to have your most important information, right? Again, read through this completely before you start filling these out, right? So scrolling through, what are you doing when you're going through this, right? If you're on form simplicity, you're going to do a slow scroll, right? You're going to, especially if you're new, you're going to go through this very slowly. And you're going to start looking for either, form simplicity, the blue highlight, or you're going to look to the left at the stars, right? So let's say you filled in page 1, you're kind of scrolling through, and now you're going to get over to page 2, right? Page 2 again, we're looking for the fill in the blanks, stars on the left, right? You see line number 72. There's a box to check. Is it subject to a lease after occupancy, right? I don't know. But you should know that, right? Is there a lease in there? If you're buying an investment property, it probably is, right? If it's a single family they're moving out, then it's probably not, right? Paragraph number 7. Do they need to assign this contract, right? There's different reasons why you would, wholesalers and whatnot. But, if they need to assign the contract, that's going to be very important. Number 8, that's an important field. Are they paying cash or financing? Big difference, right? Don't mark cash if it's a finance offer. If it's finance, 30 days for a loan commitment. Can they get approved within 30 days, right? Can they get approved sooner, right? This is a contingency that we can negotiate, right? So kind of moving through, you're going to fill in all of your financing information. Moving on, you're going to get to a point as you're scrolling through that there's not a whole lot of boxes to fill out. You can keep scrolling, Irene. There's not a whole lot of boxes that you need to fill out, right? You're kind of moving through. If you have a transaction fee, you can put it here, right? Cost to be paid for by buyer, right? But that's really it. Scrolling through, right? We're keep going through. Okay. 9C, 1, 2, and 3, right? So now we're on paragraph 9. You can't see it, but it starts at 168. Subparagraph C, and then 3, right? This determines who chooses the closing agent or the title company. It's based on tradition. There's no right or wrong answer here necessarily, but it is based on tradition. So if you're in Broward or Miami-Dade County, traditionally the buyer chooses the title company. Basically, every other county in the state of Florida, including Palm Beach County, the seller chooses the title company, right? So, what do? Well, if you're in Miami-Dade Broward, right, you're going to check 9C3, which is line 174, Miami-Dade Broward regional provision, right? If you're any other county, 9C1, which says that the seller chooses Seller chooses a title company. All right, going through, we're going to keep going. You see survey, you see home warranty. We don't really do that. Special assessments, these are huge right now. These are huge, especially if you're dealing with the condo, because they have the milestone inspections, right? So you need to talk to the listing agent before you send this offer. Are there any pending or upcoming special assessments? I'm sorry, this is wrong. This is not the milestone. This is public body. Yeah, the other special assessment is in the condo writer. This is if there's a special. This has nothing to do with the condominium building itself. This has to do with municipalities. If they're adding manholes, if they're adding a sidewalk, right? A special assessment that's being levied by one of the government bodies, right? City, state, county, maybe the neighborhood, but it has nothing to do with condos actually. Special assessment on the condos is in the condo writers. All right, so now we get to a point where you're just kind of scrolling through, right? You don't really have to fill in a whole lot of things as you continue to scroll through here, Irene. You can scroll. You're not really filling out a lot of things. Well, yeah, you are. Inspection, right? How many days to inspect? Traditionally, you don't need 15 days unless you know that it's just going to be a beast of an inspection. Most inspectors can get out there within 2 or 3 days to get the result back in a day. A week is normally enough. Better to err on the side of, more time than less. But, when you're writing an offer and you want to be competitive, say it's a property, this is one of your contingencies that you need to be looking at, right? This is one of the properties that, or this is one of the blanks that can become a sticking point, right? All things being equal, right? If you give them a shorter inspection time, the escrow money is going to go hard quicker, so the seller's going to feel more secure, so your offer is going to get a little bit better. All right. So then now, so now after this one, it's a lot of verbiage, a lot of blank pages before we finally, again, you need to be reading all of this, but it's just a lot of, how is time calculated, all of these different things. And this is the as is, which is the most commonly used. There is a crisp contract, but it's just not used very much, right? This is as is with right to inspect. It's basically what this is. So once you've filled out all of these forms, or once you filled out the entirety of this contract, you need to see, are there any addenda or riders that need to attach to this contract? This is where you're going to go. You're going to go to page 19. You're going to read through all of these. Do any of these apply? Right? Is one of the customers an agent? Right? Was it built before 1978? Is it an FHA financing deal? Right? Whatever it is, you're going to catch that when you look here. Right? Don't just assume that there's no riders, there's no addenda. Read through these and think about, does this apply to my buyer? Right? The better your offer is, the more complete it is when you send this contract in the first place, the more likely your offer is going to get accepted. If your offer is sloppy, it doesn't include all the addenda. Let's say it's a condo and you don't even send the condo writer, right? You've already lost the faith of the agent, if they're a decent agent, right? So make sure you read through these. Make sure you know which addenda apply, which ones don't. And this is your cheat sheet, right? So writer and addenda, do not forget this part. Oh yeah, additional terms. So this is where you're going to fill out the, you're going to fill out any special terms, any special clauses, anything that goes in there. Is the seller? Do you want the seller to make sure they close out all the liens, all this, all that, right? Whatever special terms. Put your transaction fee in there. Whatever it is, but make sure you don't forget this as well. Right? You want the couch, or you want all the furniture, right? You're probably not going to put this here because that's going to affect your appraisal. You're going to put a blank one. But for the most part, every other condition, every other term in here, or every other term of your offer is going to go in here, right? So other documents, when you send over your contract, what do you need? Is it cash? Is it finance? Don't worry, that's a fake bank statement. What is it? Right? This is where you're going to find this is stuff that you need to send along with it, right? So you're going to send your contract. You're going to send your any addenda, any riders that need to go along with it. If it's finance, you're going to send the pre-approval. And if it's cash, you're going to send a bank statement, right? That's your complete offer package, right? You send everything all at once, and it doesn't leave any questions for the sellers, right? Here's a list of our timelines that we follow when we do the transaction coordinating. These are all of your contingencies. Basically, looking right here, these are all of the areas. So when you're looking at contingencies, when you go back to the as-is contract, where you're filling in the blanks, those are your negotiating points. These are the things that you're negotiating: price, right? Deposit, inspection, mortgage, right? Mortgage loan approval deadline, closing date, right? These are things that you're negotiating. Some of them don't matter. Some of it on here, title commitment, who cares, right? Get it 3 days before closing and you're fine, right? Never seen that be an issue. But these other things, I mean, price obviously is number one. It's where it starts. But these other things are going to be equally important. You want to give them enough time to inspect, right? You don't want to put, an unreasonable amount of deposit. How much deposit should a buyer put, right? Where's guidance on that? Does anybody talk about, well, how much, when your buyers ask you, how much should I put for a deposit? What's the answer, right? What I tell them, 3%. 3% or higher, depending how aggressive you want to be. But there's no reason on a, $200,000 property to put $100,000, even if it's cash. Why would you put that much up for escrow, right? 200,000, put $6,000. That's reasonable. That's completely reasonable. You can negotiate that. Maybe they want to put less, put 2,000. Okay, 1%. That's fine. We'll send it out. Let's see what happens, right? They want to put 10%. They can put 20,000. Okay, that's fine. Now you're risking that, right? So just make sure you're having those conversations with them and that it is a reasonable amount for both sides. You send it out, right? You send a contract. Just some tips, right? Just for your own sanity and for the sanity of the other agent. Number one, always be quick to respond, right? The agent texts you back, hey, what about this? Get back to them right away, right? Answer them right away. Get back to them at, whatever it is. Get back to them right away. Number two, gain their trust, right? You're going to spread honey. You're not spreading vinegar, right? So you need to be this agent's friend. This agent needs to be your friend. This is a person that you're going to have somewhat of a long-term relationship with. This may not be the only deal. The real estate world down here in Southeast Florida is a very small real estate world. You don't want to make enemies, right? You don't want to get yourself a reputation of being, dishonest or unethical or whatever, right? You need to be able to gain their trust. And just in case this deal doesn't work out, just let it go, right? Dennis, you have something to say?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
No, my thing too is like with the deposits, I usually do a smaller first one, then a second one after inspection period.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, you don't have to give everything all up front. There's no point, right? Like if it doesn't, if you know it's not gonna, if you know that the inspection is gonna be tricky, don't put a bunch of money on the line just in case something goes wrong, right? You don't need to risk it. So yeah, you can always do it in a series, right? Your second deposit could be after the inspection, after the appraisal, whenever it seems appropriate, right? Every deal is going to be a little bit different, right? So you got that. What are you looking out for? Again, these are where your deals blow up, right? The inspection and appraisal, these are where your deals blow up. Your inspection, when you have an inspector, if you're referring an inspector, maybe you should refer more than one until you really know that you can trust one. But before the inspection, number one, make sure they do a good job. Make sure they take care of your customer and they disclose everything. But maybe also let them know that, look, if it's not, a huge major thing, could you please not make this sound like a huge major thing, right? Protect your customer, disclose everything, tell them everything, show them everything. They should know everything. But, if the kitchen sink has a drip, don't make it sound like the kitchen's going to flood overnight, right? Some inspectors do that and they're deal killers. We want our customers to know everything, absolutely. But we don't need to blow things up and make it bigger than they are. And then appraisal report, how do you handle that, right? Are you going to the appraisal? Who's the point of contact from the lender, right? Is it you or is it the listing agent? If you go to the appraisal, do you take comps or do you not? Right? These are things that you need to figure out at this juncture of the transaction. Right? How are you handling these things? You need to know what you're going to do when these situations come up. If it's a tough one, maybe you want to pull some comps, right? Do a little bit of the appraiser's job. Don't shove them on them. They don't want them. They don't want them. Sometimes the appraisers don't want them. Sometimes they appreciate it, right? Should you be the appraiser's friend? Probably should, right? Should you maybe pump the appraiser's ego a little bit, right? Make them feel smart and special? Probably should, right? Most deals hinge on the appraisal. I've seen more deals in the last year fall apart because of the appraisal than the inspection, right? Appraisers are deal killers, especially when the market's moving up as fast as it is, or it has been, right? Property goes up 20% from one contract to the next. Well, you have a lag, right? There's a lag in the data, right? Because every next sale is higher, but every previous sale is lower. So even if your next sale is higher, that previous sale was lower, right? How do you address that? How do you deal with that? You need to know these things going into it up front, right? You don't want to have to dispute an appraisal, right? After this, title company is gonna find all of these things, right? They're gonna send an estoppel letter over to your association, gonna tell them all the numbers, right? Which is going to include your special assessment, right? Is there a special assessment? Is there one pending? Is there whatever? Milestone is a huge thing. You need to know about that before even probably sending the contract. Do they have enough funds to fund the concrete restoration? Does it need concrete restoration? When was the last time it was done? Right? Reach out to us. We've become pretty much experts on these things in the last 6 or 8 months because the assessments, they're deal killers. These are serious deal killers. We had one that was a $90,000 special assessment with the association. Buyer didn't want to pay it, obviously. Seller didn't want to pay it. Deal fell apart. It was over. Done. $90,000. Like, don't you think the seller should have known about that? You would think, right? But for some reason, they don't always. Lien searches, open permits, lender approval. These are things that you just, as we go through, title company is going to take care of this. Final thing, lender approval. You get clear to close. That's music to your ears. Clear to close. Those are my 3 favorite words. All right. So before we move on, does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have anything? Any other? This is just for buyers right now. We're flipping over to listings and sellers next. But does anybody have anything to add? Any tricks? Any techniques? Anything that I kind of overlooked? Go ahead, Lorna.
Just something that I normally do for all my my contracts for my buyers. I usually do like a cover sheet, and I put my contact information, name of my company, contact information. I also put a little blurb that says, please, buyer has given permission for you to contact the lender to attest to their credit worthiness and ability to close. And then I put the top bullet points that I think that, first thing as an agent, especially as a listing agent, you're getting an offer you need to see. Purchase price, right? Inspection period, escrow deposit, loan approval, time period. And then I list all the attachments, all the addenda, I list them there. So I normally do that because I've been told in the past that, hey, the way you presented your offer was the reason why we went with your offer as opposed to somebody else, because it was just so neat, so compact, everything was in order. So again, just little things to make my, offer stand out whenever I submit an offer, especially if I'm in a multiple offer situation.
Yeah, I love that. Like we talked about, previously, you're kind of negotiating in this entire process. So this is your first stage in the negotiating process in the purchase, right? So how do you present yourself? Kind of like I said previously, make sure your offer has a complete package, number one. You send just the as is and you're missing addenda, you don't send proof of funds, you might not even be serious, right? Like, this agent's going to be a pain to work with. Doing things like that, for sure. Going above and beyond to make an impression in the beginning, absolutely. I've heard it myself, right? Like, same thing. Agents talk about just how well written the contract is, right? Going back a few steps, actually, now that I think about it, sometimes you're looking at the blanks and it gives you the default, right? Like, I don't know, for example, the loan commitment, 30 days if left blank. You don't have to put it, if it's 30 days, leave it at 30 days, right? Don't like clutter your, don't clutter your contract up filling in blanks that default at something anyway that you're going to keep, right? Inspection defaults at 15 days if left blank. If you want a 15-day inspection, don't put it in there. It's already there, right? You want a nice, clean looking contract. When I see all those blanks filled in, that was probably a new agent, right? Like I kind of already know, like that smells like a new agent. So, you know, we're sniffing that out. Like, okay, let's see what else, you know, what else we need to find in this contract. You're going to scrutinize it a little bit more. That's a great tip, Lorna. Yeah, that's a really great tip. We do the same thing. I don't do a cover letter, but I'll put it in the, I'll put it in my email body, right? Just kind of highlighting it because you're negotiating. So you better sell that offer. You better sell your customer, right? You better sell why yours is the one that they should accept. And that's presentation 101 right there. So that's a great tip. Does anybody else have any thoughts or ideas or anything that I missed? Any strategies? Okie dokie. Moving on to listing agent. So listings, what I tell my team, are the holy grail of real estate. They're what everybody wants, right? You want the inventory. If you have the product, then you know you have something to sell, right? If you have the consumer, you have the buyer, you have to go find the product. When you have the listing, the buyers find you. The selling agents find you, right? They call you. List to last. When the market slows down, there might be 1,000,001 buyers out there, right? Or sorry, when the market speeds up, there might be 1,000,001 buyers out there, but not enough listings. If you have that listing, you're guaranteed a sale because there's, you know, thousands of buyers for every one property. That's what we saw in, you know, end of 2020, probably going into like the beginning of, I don't know, 2022, mid 2022, something like that. You know, if you had a listing, you knew it was going to sell. Didn't matter what you put it at, right? A little 2-2 condo in a 55 plus community, put it at 350,000, you probably got, you know, 20 offers by the end of the night, right? It's just what it was. You had the product, right? You always want to have the listings, right? Listings are the holy grail. Now there are people that they prefer to work with buyers. They don't like listings, you know, and that's okay. You prefer buyers. That's totally fine. You know, it's your business. You have to be happy in your business. But in my opinion, you're gonna want the product. You want the inventory, right? So you did your lead generation, you did your follow-up, scheduled your appointment, right? What do you need to do before you go on your appointment, right? Number one, you need to know what to take on the appointment. If you go to a listing appointment with no listing contract, you know, if you go there without your comparable sales to give them a value, if you go there without the listing presentation, you're already lost, right? You don't need to spend a lot of time on these things, but you better have the contract. Before you go, check the MLS, make sure it's not listed anymore. If it's still listed, you need to find out, well, what's going on with this? Why it's still listed, right? Number two, the day of or the day before, depending when the appointment is and when you scheduled it, make sure you confirm the appointment before you go. If they don't answer, what do? That you have to figure out what you're going to do, right? They didn't pick up the phone. They're not responding to text messages. The appointment's at 2 o'clock. It's now 1 o'clock. What do? Me personally, I go on the appointment anyway. I go. I don't want them to say that I didn't show up, right? I go to the appointment. If they're not there, well, I'll text them, hey, I was here, right? And they'll call me back, I hope, right? Number three, if they do answer during your confirmation phone call, ask them these questions. If it's a husband and wife on the deed and it's only going to be the husband there, should you go? Or do you want to wait until all decision makers are there? I think you'd want all decision makers. I know I would, because one spouse, it takes two to sell, right? Everybody that's on that deed has to sign that listing agreement. You can't have a husband and a wife on a deed and just the husband sign the listing agreement. The wife has to sign it as well, right? 2 to sell, 1 to buy. So that means the husband and wife, the husband alone could sign the purchase contract as long as he's the only one on the pre-qualification or pre-approval. But they can't, no spouse can unilaterally sell the property. So make sure all of the decision makers are going to be there. How much do you want to list your house for? Why would you not ask that? Right? I mean, how much easier is your listing appointment when you already know what they want to list it for and you've looked at the comps and you know what it's worth? Why would you not ask that up front? Before I come, how much do you want to list it for? I don't know, 500,000. Okay, great, 500,000. What price once you go below? 450,000. Man, that's like gold, man. Right? You know exactly what you're walking into. How soon do you want to list your house? If what I say today makes sense, are you ready to sign a listing contract today? Heck yeah. Cool. Let's do it. Right? So these are just some things to keep in mind before you go on your listing appointment, so you can be a little bit more prepared when you actually get to your listing appointment, right? Bring your CMA, right? Walk around, talk about upgrades and repairs. Your CMA is going to be a range because you don't really know how much the house is going to sell for. You can't say your house is worth 450,000. First of all, it's not an appraisal, right? You're going to give them a range. It's going to sell somewhere between 425 and 475. Where do you want to list it? 425 is your low end, 475 is your high end, 450 is your middle number, right? Do a CMA. You need to bring that with you, right? And then when you're doing the CMA, you can't compare a house with a remodeled kitchen to a house that was built in 1970 with an all original kitchen. You need to make adjustments, right? If you can find apples to apples, that's your best bet. But more than likely, you're not going to, right? So you need to say, okay, a new kitchen's going to be worth 20,000 more. New bathroom's going to be worth 10,000 more. New roof's going to be worth 30,000 more, right? Whatever they have, you need to figure out how much is it worth more, right? And if it's not something that's immediately visible, a new AC, I wouldn't recommend replacing the AC unless you have to. But you need to sell that, right? That should be in your description, because they're not going to see that in the pictures unless you take a picture of the new AC. But I don't think a picture of an air conditioner really helps you sell a house, right? So, just keep that in mind when you're looking at the price and you're doing your CMA, that, it's not apples to apples. What's your listing strategy? I think everybody has a little bit different strategy. The sellers will almost always want to list it high and leave room to negotiate. That strategy is going to get you less buyers in the door day one, right? I mean, it's listed at the high end. Buyers become an expert in that local market, right? If I'm a buyer that wants to buy a house in Coral Springs near, I don't know, Coral Glades High School, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, and my budget's $650,000, and I need a 2-car garage, I've probably seen every house in that criteria. And I know when I walk into a house that's overpriced. When you price yourself too high, you price yourself out of the market. I'm going to look, my budget's $650,000. I'm looking at a house listed at $650,000, but I've looked at enough that I know that this house is worth $550,000. There's no way I'm going to get it for, I know, yeah, it's worth $550,000. So I'm a little discouraged, right? Because it's $100,000 overpriced. I might not even send an offer. So if you price it high, don't price it too high. My rule is 10%, right? If it's 425 is low, 450 is middle, 475 is high, I wouldn't go more than 10% over that middle number, right? I just wouldn't. Otherwise, you're going to be priced way out of the market. You're never going to get any offers, and you got to call the seller up and say, sorry, I miscalculated these numbers, and we got to lower your price, right? There's the other end of the spectrum, low, price it at the low end, give multiple offers, right? Create an auction, right? Have you ever been to an auction where you really want something, or you see that 3 or 4 other people really want something because they see the value in it and they get emotional? I've done it, and I pissed off a lot of buyers agents this way, but I tell them, like, look, I'm going to be sharing your offer with everybody else that has their hat in the ring. When nobody else wants to go any higher, that's when we'll accept the offer. Treat everybody the same, treat everybody fair. If one of the buyers is your buyer, you better disclose that, right? But treat everybody exactly the same, and you're going to be just fine. Agents will say, well, you can't share the highest offer. Well, yeah, you can. Ask your seller. Are you okay if we go with this strategy? Right? And then you got right down the middle. Right? This is where it's more likely to sell. 425 is low, 475 is high, 450. That's kind of like your likely sales price, give or take, you know, maybe a little bit either way. Let's just go ahead and list it there. I think that's what most people do, or what most people want to do. Most sellers want to go high, right? I think you should go to the low end, get multiple offers, bid it up, right? Because if you list a $500,000 house for $450,000, you think you're going to get multiple offers, right? Do you think people get a little fired up about that? You think people are going to really want that property? Probably, right? And depending on the market, you know, you got to figure out which strategy you're going to go with, right? So you get there, go through the listing agreement. Irene, this isn't going to work for me again. You get to the listing agreement, same thing, man. A lot of the most important information is on page 1. The nice thing, the thing that I really love about the listing agreement is it's only 4 pages. So it's so super freaking simple, man, right? You go on Form Simplicity, it's going to have the blue highlights, right? Same thing, look for the stars on the left. That tells you where you need to fill something out, right? Street address, legal description, you know, whatever it is, personal property, you know, are they selling, what conveys with the property, right? What's the most important thing? Price. That's all the seller really cares about. How much can I sell my house for, right? You're going to fill it in right there, right? What terms are they going to take, right? Blank, 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 blank. Then you get to, what do you get to? The commission. Compensation. So there's a lot of debate right now about commission. Remax and some other large companies just settled some commission disputes. So, those lawsuits don't necessarily apply to the way that we collect and pay commission. In the state of Florida, or at least on on this listing agreement, I think it's the FAR bar listing agreement, the seller pays the listing broker the full commission, and the listing broker shares that commission with the selling broker, the buyer's agent's broker, right? So keep that in mind. So they're going to say, what's your commission? Well, 6%, right? What is your commission? Should be 6%. When somebody asks you, what's your commission? 6% or 7%, right? If you don't speak your commission with confidence, then they're going to know that they can beat you up on your commission. And believe me, you earn every penny of your commission. What we do is really, really hard. You know, it takes a lot of years to get this down to a science, right? So you earn your commission. Don't be so quick to give all of your money away. I tell the customers all the time, look, if I give away all my money right now, how much easier do you think it's going to be for me to give away your money when I have to? Right? I fight for my money, and I'm going to fight for your money. What's the commission? 6%. Can we talk about it? Yeah, we can talk about it. Right? Let me show you everything that I do for that 6%. Right? That goes back to the listing presentation. Again, don't tell them you're going to do something that you don't do. You don't want to get a reputation as a liar. Right? Take it out of the listing presentation. If you don't do it, then don't tell them you do it. You're not going to mail postcards. Don't tell them you're going to mail postcards. You're going to do it. Great. Right? Go down to paragraph 9. How much do you split with the cooperating broker? Right? So when we list it at 6%, and another agent comes along, brings us a buyer, how much are you going to give them? I give them 2.5. Right? And I take 3.5. Why? Why do I do it? Because I can. Right? As long as the seller agrees. Why? I mean, there's no rule that says you need to give 3 and 3. There's plenty of listings out there, 2%, 1.5%, 1%, right? Doesn't matter. I give them 2.5. We have a lot of time and a lot of money invested into getting this listing and marketing this listing and selling this listing and showing this listing, right? Doing all the things we have to do for this listing. You want to get some of that back. List it for 6%, give them 2.5. List it for 5.5, give them 2.5. Yeah, it doesn't matter, right? But there's no reason that you have to match. You know, there's no reason that you have to match it, right? You know, so just keep that in mind. You know, if you have any questions, let us know. You know, and that's really it. Anything, any special clauses, anything that needs to go in there, make sure you fill it out, right? Showings will only be on Tuesdays, you know, whatever it is, doesn't matter, right? Whatever it is, fill it out. It's going to be an additional terms, get it signed. Now you're off to the races, right? Get your professional photographer set up, get it on the MLS, sell it. Next steps, right? Simple enough. At your listing appointment, if it's condo, maybe even a homeowners association, you want to make sure that you either take those documents with you, right? These here, or you leave a list behind of what they need to collect. This is another inspection that the buyer gets on a condominium. They get 3 days to inspect all of these documents. If you forget to give them any one of them, I can almost guarantee you nobody's ever read the Declaration of Condominium article or the Articles of Incorporation. It's the most boring stuff you've ever seen, and some of it's as thick as a Bible. But if you don't give that to the buyer's agent right away, let's say you give it to them the day before closing. Oh, whoops, here's the Articles of Incorporation. They can cancel for any reason. That's an inspection. They get 3 days to inspect that. And that's non-waivable. Does it say that on there? Maybe not. You can't waive those rights.
Disagreement.
Yeah, they can't. A buyer can't say, "Don't worry about sending me those documents. I don't need them." They can't sign a document that says, "Don't worry about sending me those documents. I don't need them." Even if they own in that community already, they're the next door neighbor buying the property. You still have to give them these. You cannot waive this right. 100% of the time, you need to give them these documents. And if you don't have them, get them. If you don't know how to get them, call us. That's what we're here for, right? We're here to help you figure out how to get through these kind of things. But you need to 100% of the time get these documents. There's no exemption for it. You're going to kill your deal, right? Sometimes we have the buyer and the listing agent doesn't give us Declaration of Condominium and Articles of Incorporation. Maybe we got them on our own, right? Maybe we found a way to get them, but they didn't give them to us. Something goes crazy, right? We're out of the contract. Even if we're over on every other contingency, everything else is over. Day before closing, doesn't matter. This is a must. You know, it's a strategy that we use on the listing side. I'm sorry, on the buyer side. I mean, we don't always beg for these. Sometimes we get them. They don't have to know, right? But if they didn't send them to us, that's a contingency that we have. That's our ace in the hole, right? We keep that one in our back pocket. It's a good strategy. It saved us more than once, right? You guys already saw this. Once you've listed it, these are the things you need to talk about. These things you need to do. Smell is really important. Smell is really, really, really important, guys. You know, declutter it, upgrades and repairs, home staging. What's the budget, right? Max out their budget. They got $500, use all 500. They got 5,000, use all 5,000. They got 55,000, use all 55,000, right? Listing preparation. Two things besides the legal side of it, square footage, you know, whatever else, waterfront, this, that, and the other thing. Two things. People are going to look at the property and they're going to read about the property, right? So should you have a professional photographer or should you use your iPhone with 3 cameras on it? We always use a professional photographer, right? Don't be an amateur, be a professional and hire a professional, right? Let them do what they do best. Your job is to sell, not to take photos, right? Hire a photographer. And you're not very good at writing listing descriptions, right? The public remarks, use ChatGPT, right? You know, write me a description, 500 words or less for a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in Coral Springs near Coral Glades High, you know, with a new roof, new kitchen, and impact windows. Enter. Read it, right? And then make your modifications, right? Talk about the red front door and so talk about the, you know, plantation shutters inside the house. It'll redo it. Read it again. You want to change something else? Tell it, give it what you want it to change it to. ChatGPT does an amazing job writing these public remarks. Like absolutely amazing job. right? You don't need to go this alone. Let AI do this for you. This is one of the benefits of AI right now is let it give you the words, right? Let it give you the words. You know, instead of, you know, being the one to write walking closet, let ChatGPT get it right and say it's a walk-in closet. Dennis?
Yeah, with the listings, I wanted to confirm that when you give out the condo docs and stuff and you have the listing, make sure you send the paperwork for them to sign that they did receive it.
Yeah.
And they send it back to you. This way you have a record on the date they did get it.
Yeah, and on that same vein, you know, when you send it all out, even if they sign that they received them, but you're missing the articles of incorporation, you're still screwed, right? Just keep that in mind. You need to send everything, every page. You're missing one page, even if they signed it, if they find that, you're screwed. When our condo deals go wrong and we're out of every other contingency, this is where we go when we have the buyer, right? We go here. Did we receive all the documents? A good agent will make sure that, you know, the buyer received all the documents. An amateur is going to learn this the hard way, right? When their seller's pissed off at them because they didn't catch it ahead of time, right? This is chess. You need to be 4, 5, 6 moves ahead, right? Always be 4, 5, 6 moves ahead, right? All right, you got it listed, you got everything figured out. How are you scheduling your properties? We use Showing Time. I highly recommend Showing Time. It's paid for by your local association, whether you're Beaches or Miami, and it just keeps everything organized. You can get a pop-up, a push notification. You get a text message. You get a phone call. I don't think you should get a phone call. I hate it when they call me. It's annoying. You have to listen to it. But if that's your thing, then hey, you know, go ahead and do it, right? You can get emails. I wouldn't recommend that either because not everybody checks their emails all the time. I like the text messages and I like the push notifications, right? It's got all the agent's info. It's got the time. You can suggest another time. You can message the agent there, or you can find their text message info and text them from there, right? You schedule your own showings on here. It automatically sends out for feedback. Don't get mad if an agent doesn't give you feedback because you probably don't give feedback either, right? But Showing Time is really an amazing tool for showings. I think it's owned by Zillow, and everybody's kind of has conspiracies about that, but I don't really care personally. It makes my life easier, so who really cares, right? My opinion. If you care, that's okay. How do you know if you're overpriced? You got your sales price, you did your CMA, you did everything. Property's not selling. How do you know? Well, if you go 2 weeks with no showings, or you get 10 showings and no offers, then you're overpriced. And now you need to go have that awkward conversation with your seller to get a price reduction, right? 2 weeks, no showings, you're probably way overpriced. 10 showings, no offer, you might not be far off, or you're just not doing a good job following up with the agents that did look at the property to sell it to them to get them to send an offer, right? Do you reach out after an agent shows one of your properties? Do you call them for feedback? How'd it go, right? How do you know that they don't have an objection that's easily handled, right? Oh, well, you know, the room that was painted blue, they just couldn't get over it. Hey, we'll have it painted white by closing, right? Be a problem solver, right? Be proactive. Don't be reactive. Get some feedback. 10 showings, no offers. You're close. You probably could have had an offer in one of those 10 showings, right? 2 weeks, no showings. Yeah, you're way off. You need a big price adjustment. At least 10% would be my suggestion, right? So don't let a property sit. They're not sitting on the market very long, right? They're really not. And here's a tip that I do when I have a listing. I set up a search for my customer's neighborhood where my listing is, for the actives, pendings, active under contract, and closed. And they get auto emails about all the activity in their neighborhood. Especially if you know that you're at the high end. By doing this, they're keeping track, they're keeping an eye on what's going on in their neighborhood. So over time, they're going to realize they are overpriced, right? They're going to come to that realization on their own. And your conversation, when you go 2 weeks with no showings, 2 weeks later is going to be a lot easier because they're looking at this data. And the auto emails automatically went out. Even when another house in their neighborhood does a price reduction, they're automatically going to get an email for it, right? Every change that happens in their neighborhood, they're going to know about it. It with comparable homes, right? If they're a 3,000 square foot house and it's, this huge community and there's 6,000 square foot houses, you don't want to send them that, right? Narrow it down so that they're receiving comparable properties. But when they do, they're going to know, right? Again, they're going to become experts. It's not that they don't have this data at their fingertips that they went on realtor.com anyway. Make their lives easier by sending it to them automatically. Make your life easier by keeping them up to date with what's going on in their neighborhood. Because by doing that, every conversation after that will be a lot easier, right? You don't have to bring them up to speed from all the activity that's happened in the last 2 weeks. They've already got it in real time. Agent puts in a price reduction, boom. Oh, look, my neighbor just put in a price reduction. Our showings just slowed way down. Well, maybe we better put in a price reduction too, right? Unless we want to wait for the neighbor's house to sell. But this is a strategy that we use. It's very, very effective. And then when they close, just turn it off, right? On the flip side, when we have buyers and they go under contract, we stop sending them properties. Because if you've ever bought a car, the first thing that happens after you buy that car is you see that car for sale somewhere else for a lower price, right? You find a better deal. So after you buy a new car, you have to stop looking at cars for a while because you're going to have buyer's remorse and you're going to be annoyed. Like, dang, why didn't I wait for that one, right? Maybe there was something to it that you don't know because you didn't go look at it, but it's still going to be in your head, right? As something that maybe you should have waited for. So, and then before accepting an offer, always call the lender, right? We have a questionnaire. It's in Trello again. Link is at the bottom with some questions that you should ask the lender, right? Before you do anything on a finance deal, you call the lender and you ask them these questions, right? Because if you don't call the lender, you don't really know, right? What's the difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval? You want a pre-approval. You don't want a pre-qualification. That one might not even close in the first place, right? So call the lender, right? Look up the lender, right? Because you got that bonus question there at the bottom. Read their reviews. If that lender's got bad reviews, you might not close, right? If they've got a bunch of really good reviews, 1,500 5-star reviews, everybody loves them. That means they're probably really good at closing. And that pre-approval you have in your hands, it's probably golden. Call the lender. Don't be lazy, right? Don't expect that the other agent actually knows what they're doing, right? Don't expect that the other agent call the lender themselves. You'll see it, right? This is your job. This is your career. This is how you make a living, right? Call the lender, then call the agent back and you start negotiating, right? But always, always, always call the lender. All right, what did we miss? I know it's 1 o'clock. Don't want to keep you guys much longer, but on the listing side, did I miss anything? Any strategies you guys use that would be helpful to share here?
Joe, I usually, with the listings is I'll get, like you said, give them a price range. And if they want to go high, I let them know too. You're also helping sell all these houses underneath you because you're so high priced.
Oh yeah. When we show houses, yeah, that's 100% true, man. When we're selling a house, yeah, we'll definitely point out the high priced ones. 100%. Some buyers agents will take their buyers to go see the higher priced homes, knowing that in the end, when they get to the reasonably priced one, that's the one that they're going to buy, right?
Yep.
Just show them the overpriced one. When you're overpriced, that's 100% right. You're helping to sell the other ones. You might be waiting for a while. Pricing it right is it's an art and a science, right? Because we don't know who's on the market today, right? The highest paying buyer might have just left the market yesterday when we listed it today, right? So we got to get the next highest paying buyer. So don't assume that just because you did your CMA and you got everything just right, that everything is just right, right? So anything else from you guys? All right, here's our closing thought. When you have a listing, when you have a buyer, when you have a customer, good communication is the key to success. And how do you know if you're doing a good job? Well, if your customer calls you and says, hey, what's going on with my deal? You failed, right? You didn't do your job, right? When you go to those appointments, you need to set an expectation. I'll call you once a week with, feedback. I'll email you once a week with feedback. I'll text you once a week with feedback. I'll call you once a month with feedback. It's probably not enough, right? Ours, we do once a week, right? End of the week, we update every customer, even if there's no update. Hey, no update, we're just waiting to close, right? But this way they know the expectation, they know what's going on, right? They're not sitting around all weekend worrying, call you on Sunday night at 7:30, what's going on? Well, nothing. We're just waiting to close, because there is that point. Sometimes you sit around for 2 or 3 weeks, you're just waiting to close, right? So set that expectation. If your customer has to call you and ask for an update, or text you or email you for an update, you have failed your job, right? And if you need help on your transactions, you're already paying a $197 transaction fee in this office, another $153, and our transaction coordinator handles it for you. All of this, most of this, is going to be taken care of for you, right? We'll help you with everything, top to bottom, front to back, left to right. So, if you need transaction coordinator, whether you're a new agent, experienced agent, whatever, we can help you with that. So, all right. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts? Anybody have anything to add before we end our session today? Nope. All right. Well, that's it, guys. I appreciate you guys coming. I hope that this was an informative meeting for you guys. I hope it was helpful.